let's begin with what we are tracking as far as, Ashneer Grover and his mega trajectory to becoming a household name is concerned. An EOW investigation, Economic Offences Wing, has now concluded that Ashneer Grover could have backdated invoices, siphoned off money from his own company, BharatPe.
Yes, Shweta, and I think all this starts about a year ago from now. This is around the time last year that BharatPe had filed a criminal case against Ashneer Grover, who was earlier the co-founder of the company. And this was pertaining to irregularities to the tune of almost 82 crore rupees, 81.28 crore rupees. Now, what were these allegations and what has the EOW of the Delhi police found out? Now, what the EOW report suggests, and this report has been submitted to the Delhi High Court, it suggests that as many as 8 proxy HR firms had been created and hired by BharatPe at a time when Ashneer Grover was the founder and CEO of the company and his wife Madhuri Jain was the head of controls at the company. These 8 HR companies have received money from BharatPe for activities or work not done by these HR companies. Now, the rabbit hole goes a little deeper. 5 out of these 8 companies actually opened their bank accounts much after the date of the invoice that they billed BharatPe on. So, if the date was X, the bank account of that company was actually opened after that invoice was raised. So, these were 5 out of these 8 companies did not have bank accounts at all. Now, according to the Economic Offences Wing of Delhi Police.
To put it simply, it means that these companies were deliberately created only to transfer money.
Absolutely. So, these were backdated invoices created on companies that opened bank accounts after the date on the invoice and companies that did not do any real work for BharatPe with the purpose of siphoning off money. Madhuri Jain, who was head of controls at that time when these payments were made, actually asked banks to expedite payments into those accounts. Now, as much as from this overall allegation of 82 odd crore rupees from BharatPe, about 7.6 crore rupees was transferred to these 8 HR companies or proxy companies. Now, we are yet to sort of ascertain, because I wrote to Ashneer Grover this morning. That email did not elicit a response up until the time we entered the studio, and even my WhatsApp message to Madhuri Jain has been unanswered. She hasn't seen it yet. So, we don't know what the Grover family is really going to say. But these 8 accounts that we are talking about, these 8 accounts, 5 of these 8 accounts actually have the same address, on the KYC of those bank accounts. And that address belongs to immediate family members of Madhuri Jain, who's the wife of Ashneer Grover. So, I think all of this really coming at a time when Ashneer Grover has gained popularity on social media, on YouTube as a public speaker, become a household name immediately after Shark Tank, and soon after the Shark Tank season 1 ended, that gave Ashneer Grover this household fame, is when this BharatPe controversy really broke out last year. So, Ashneer Grover right now finds himself in the midst of something that he defined as doglapan, and that doglapan is pretty much coming back directly to him. This is deceit, this is definitely a fraud committed willingly, and money siphoned off. I think all of this brings us back to that very core critical question, that whether you are a startup, whether you are a large unicorn, whether you are an unlisted company, why is it that corporate governance norms, auditing norms are so lax? I think we've seen enough and more cases, whether it was Byju's, whether it's been Sequoia Capital, whether it is now in the case of BharatPe. Case after case, we continue to find these irregularities in books, in audits, and founders, CEOs being given this free will, free pass to go ahead, create companies, transfer money into those companies, and really flout the rules of corporate governance and the norms of corporate governance. And that has to really be looked at very, very seriously in the context of India. Coming back specifically to Ashneer Grover, I think all the fame and all the doglapan and all the, the book that he's written and the public speeches that he makes, those inspirational speeches that he makes, I think all this is now going to come back to bite him, and this sort of underbelly of greed in startup unicorn founders, this greed of excess money, illegal money, using company funds to make personal gains and creating bogus companies. All these are very, very serious offences.
Absolutely serious offences. And you know, you rightly mentioned lack of enough and adequate measures to ensure corporate governance norms are adhered to, specifically when a company is not listed. What happens therein? Because we've seen many of these cases, and not just with BharatPe, but also a lot of similar such cases that are emerging with Byju's and other startup players. What do we do in case, or what does the government do or regulatory authority do in case where a company is non-listed? Because that's where the problem lies.
So I think by rule, by definition, if you're an India registered incorporated company, then you have to follow the principles laid down by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And by default, your books have to be audited, your financial statements have to be submitted, reported to MCA or to the registrar of companies. Now, it doesn't usually become public. People like you and me don't have access to these financial statements like we do in the case of listed companies, because listed companies by law need to disclose their earnings regularly, publicly. In the case of unlisted companies and these celebrated startups, unicorns, etc., a lot of what they file is delayed. They don't follow the quarter-on-quarter cycle. We've seen in the case of Byju's, for example, financial statements, a regular sort of delay was about 18 months. But now we've seen just in the month of November financial statements for FY22 being released. So which is far longer than the 18-month in any case delay which has become normal. And in the case of BharatPe, I think you have to give it to BharatPe's existing team that while the founder was the sitting CEO of the company, an investigation was started, initiated, and criminal cases were filed against BharatPe founder Ashneer Grover as well as his wife Madhuri Jain. What we were picking up last year were much smaller ticket size scams. We were talking about makeup items and makeup bills, etc., being billed to the company. But I think a scam as huge as 82 crore rupees is obviously serious. 8 companies, HR companies, proxy bogus companies formed and money into those companies expedited. And according to the EOW finding, from the 7.6 crore rupees that was transferred to these 8 bogus companies, there were self-withdrawals done by Madhuri Jain and her family. So you get the company to put money into a proxy company, and then that proxy company signs self-checks and withdraws money in cash. So what happened to that money is another paper trail which will now have to be investigated and revealed.
Absolutely. Ashneer Grover and family will have a lot to answer by the way of those charges leveled by EOW. We'll track them.